Earthsea Cycle is all about freedom and liberation. Before I get into this video, I want to say this is a very heavy spoiler-filled video, so if you don't want spoilers for Earthsea, you don't need to watch all of this video. I do recommend you go off and read this video that I made, which is all about Earthsea as a whole, why you should get into it, and it's very much got no spoilers, or well, far less spoilers than this video will. I'm going to link it above and in the description down below for you to watch. But if you have read the Earthsea Cycle, let's get into talking about freedom and liberation. So, the Earthsea Cycle, I believe, has two different types of freedom and liberation, at the very least. It's got the freedom of oneself, how one can liberate themselves to improve and help society, and then just freedom and liberation in general. I think the first two books basically concentrate on that first type I spoke about, and the rest of them, including Tales of Earthsea, is a bit different because it's many different stories, so it's got both, but the other books go more into general freedoms and general liberation, but still people do, you know, liberate themselves of ideas and thoughts. So let's talk about the liberation of self. I think there's two characters that really portray this in the books. It is Ged and Tehanu, who, oh, what a sweet couple they are, aren't they? Ged mostly does this in the first book, and Tehanu mostly in the second book. Ged physically has to defeat the evil part of himself in this book. It is a part of himself that is created due to his own ego, due to the ego that was inflated by the Wizards of Roke, and he has to physically defeat that part of himself. It's not really a big altercation, but you know, he has to kill it essentially at the end of the first book, and it represents Ged liberating himself, liberating his mind completely. And obviously Ged isn't a perfect person going forward from here, but he damn near enough is after doing this. Especially when he's a wizard. Ged has to confront the shade that he himself created out of his own egotism, and he defeats it because of what he learns through his character development. Throughout the first book, he goes through struggles, he goes through self-reflection, and it's like, wait, I kind of get why that shade of me is there. I need to get why it is chasing me. And throughout the book, he discovers that that shade is the manifestation of basically his negativity, of basically all of his evil, for lack of a better term. It's not necessarily evil, but through that development, through realizing that, he can then go off and confront this shade of himself and then use magic, or you know, basically his name, to defeat the shade, to actually acknowledge that he himself has changed as a person and grown, and he has liberated himself, he has freed himself of these ideas of what it is like to be a wizard that were implanted in him by the Wizards of Roke, by the people of Gaunt, and also by himself, his egotism, his realizing he is better than others at magic. And that is what leads him to being able to become Archmage. He is able to go through that, he is able to improve himself and become the best version of himself because he has freed himself of all of these negative aspects we all have as people that in part are due to just how we view ourselves, and also how society conditions us to view ourselves, whether we are amazing at something like Ged or we're just okay, we're not even great at something, which manifests like depression and stuff within us. And I think this reflects Tehanu as well. Tehanu goes through a similar thing. She obviously is... She doesn't become the way she is through free will, kind of like Ged does. Ged becomes egotistical because of all the positive stuff around him, and you know, he chooses to go off to Rogue. He chooses to become a wizard. Tehanu didn't have that choice, so that manifestation of negativity in her is really almost forced on her, unlike Ged, where it's not forced on him, he just kind of has a big head about it. Tehanu develops that because it's pushed and pushed on her more so than it is ever on Ged. And it takes Ged being someone who has been able to defeat that side of himself to help Tehanu push back against all of those emotions, to help Tehanu push back against, you know, her embracing the evil, embracing the gods in the Tombs of Atuan. And, you know, Ged doesn't do it all alone, obviously, and neither does Tehanu, but it takes, and it shows Ged's development, where he has been able to defeat that part of himself. So, as someone who can be Archmage, he is able to teach others, help others liberate themselves. He becomes almost that leader of a revolution. That's a lacking term for it, but he becomes a leader, a face that will help others become better, and he helps Tehanu do so. And I mean, obviously in later books she helps him come to terms with things, but that's a different video that we'll make about relationships in Earthsea. But truthfully, the first two books are all about people overcoming themselves, liberating their minds, liberating themselves, you know, unlearning things that maybe they have been taught or thrust upon them. The later books go much wider in terms of liberation. It is helping people achieve their freedom, and ultimately the very last book is all about being able to break chains that are stopping an entire species on the planet being able to free themselves, being able to go to the other side. But we'll get to that. But, you know, from the Farthest Shore onwards, it does go a little bit more towards, you know, freeing society, freeing people. So the Farthest Shore obviously is all about finding Labanan, essentially. Labanan and Ged going to defeat someone who is oppressing masses of people across Earthsea, and they go and defeat him, and it leads to a new leader coming forward. It leads to Labanan being brought forward as the leader of Earthsea, who will bring ultimate peace. And, you know, Ged taking a step back, like maybe freeing him of his responsibilities as the leader of the people. But throughout their journey, they liberate pockets of people to help Labanan learn about it. You know, they rescue the slaves when Labanan is turned into a slave. They help the people who are being oppressed by the dragons by talking and basically doing diplomacy with the dragons, which I guess talks a bit about Le Guin's politics, which is another video I want to get into. But that entire book is about, you know, helping people in small pockets to eventually be able to lead to a greater freedom, a greater revolution, you know. And then we see Labanan doing the same thing. He is able to end slavery in parts of Earthsea. He is able to free people from oppression of the, you know, pirates or parts of the Kurdish Empire. And, you know, he is then able to use diplomacy to discuss things with the Kurds and help them, you know, end the reign of their god king. In part, he doesn't play the biggest role in that, but he is helping, fighting for the freedom of the people, both of the islands and the inland. And that's just, you know, it's all about achieving that liberation and freedom from oppressive systems that are present in Earthsea up until Labanan comes about. I think my favourite one, Tehanu, kind of straddles both. It is about Ged, Tehanu and Tehanu all trying to, like, free themselves of their interpretations of themselves, of how society views them, trying to, you know, free their minds, free their bodies of, you know, how people view them, and unlearning all these things. Ged, you know, freeing himself of his, like, feeling of suffocation of no longer being Archmage. Tehanu freeing herself of societal expectations of a woman, of a widower. Tehanu freeing herself of how people see her as someone who, not just as a girl, but also someone who has a disability as well. Again, that's the more personal freedom stuff, but also it is about, you know, breaking the chains of oppression from the wizards who are, you know, oppressing the people around them, and how Actually, in Tehanu, Guin goes a little bit more in line with my politics, where there was a need for violence to help end that oppression. There was a need for the dragons to come to defeat the evil wizards who are oppressing the people of God. And how basically when you are fighting an enemy who refuses to be reasoned with, like the dragons that could be dealt with diplomacy in the Farthest Shore, you cannot have diplomacy with people who are happy to violently oppress people on Gaunt. And so it took Tehanu summoning the dragons to help her to end the oppression. We see a similar thing in the Tales of Earthsea, where Dragonfly basically ends with someone using powers, using violence to defeat a guy who is controlling and oppressing the students on Roke, and basically liberating them of his negative influence over the island. It's not perfectly done. We see that in the last book, The Other Wind, where there are still pockets of people who are loyal to the ideas of the old Roke before the killing of that wizard, but it's a little bit better. It gets better, and with Lebanon's influence, it's getting better. So it's kind of, Guin introduces this idea of, you need to do both to achieve freedom. You need to use the violence against the oppressor alongside using diplomacy with the masses. Very Maoist of her, in my opinion. And I guess as we touched on earlier, in The Other Wind, Guin talks about breaking this ultimate enslavement of the dragons. You know, the humans building a almost physical wall to stop the dragons achieving their liberation, to stop the dragons on flying to the other side, to escape the world they basically lived in, to kind of go to another dimension. And it's reflected in Tehanu as a character as well, where she basically has this realization where she basically is like, I can become this dragon and be free of all of these things holding me back, of all of these negative emotions. And to get to that, she has to become more in touch with her being a dragon, with the parts of her where she feels she needs to oppress because she doesn't fit in. And she's able to break those chains, and at the same time they work in breaking the wall that is holding the dragons back, and together they all achieve this ultimate freedom and liberation that is basically put on them by society, that is put on them by the humans that wanted to stop the dragons achieving the ultimate liberation out of jealousy, out of greed. And it's the same people who are scared of Tehanu because she is different and because they are jealous of her powers and her foresight. It is freeing. They are liberated, and at the end, Ged and Tanar have their freedom from responsibility as well. They have their freedom from having to serve. They get to just enjoy themselves and be free and not have to be beholden to structures of power. So those are the ramblings of an old man talking about freedom and liberation in Earthsea. Let me know your thoughts down below. This is a little bit more abstract. This is a little bit more just thoughts that came to me whilst I was thinking about Earthsea. I want to say thank you to my members. Members are awesome. They get special videos, they get to be part of a book club. They get to help me decide what videos I make as well. So you become a member by joining down below on my channel. If you watched this part of the video, thank you for watching. Again, like I said, put your comments down below to let me know your thoughts and opinions on Earthsea. One more week of Earthsea month. Look forward to that video. Like, subscribe, share the video with a friend or family member. And as always, I hope you read a great, hopefully Earthsea book today.